turning off your phones? Can you turn off the music? Is it possible? Oh, there we go. Thank you all for coming. It's so touching to see so many people here and share in this ceremony. We have people here from following countries: Australia, England, France, Greece, Slovenia, Cyprus, Canada, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, all across the USA. And joining us virtually is Derek's daughter, Moena, from Australia, and relatives in Great Britain and France and the Middle East. So we're going to hear from some of Derek's closest friends and relatives. I want to also thank Marcel for bringing us all together. This is so special and so meaningful for all of us. Let's start with the headliner, Ambassador Frank Wisner, who officiated at Derek and Marcel's wedding in Cairo, Egypt, over 35 years ago. 33? 33. Keep going, Frank.
Father, thank you. Adam, thank you. It's an honor to join all of you today in paying tribute to a man of special character, dear to all of us, to his family, and to his beloved soulmate, Marcel. Rarely have any of us been privileged to know someone of comparable humor, wisdom, and humility, whose zest for life and friendship marked all those who knew him. Cairo, as Adam pointed out, was the place I should start my reflection about Derek. He was born there, and he was passionate about Egypt. He was passionate about the region and deeply, deeply committed to the cause of Palestine. Derek and I first met in Cairo under very unusual circumstances. Marcel asked me to stand in for her father, who could not attend her wedding. I walked up the aisle of the church and I put Derek's hand in Marcel's. That was a very special moment, and it was the first moment in a long life of friendship. The story of Derek is a special one. It is a tale of unmatched character. While Derek was an accomplished businessman, having practiced his profession in the Middle East and Australia and Britain, he was never defined by his professional engagements. Derek did not dwell on his prowess at the counting tables. But when we reflect on Derek's life, we think of the extraordinary pleasure he took from the company of others. His wisdom and insight are unmatched, as was his commitment to the welfare and well-being of his friends. Derek was a spellbinder. An hour in his company was an unmatched experience. The rich tones of Derek's voice ring in my ears. I'm sure they ring in all of yours. We owe him a great deal, especially in recent years to his contribution to the culinary arts. Derek introduced us to the wonderful gifts of Mediterranean cooking. Unmatched equally was the depth of Derek's regard for his daughter Moena. He took no greater pride than his success in raising her and bringing her to the point of success that she enjoys with her life today. I deeply regret that distance separates us today from Derek's Australian family. We send them our love as we recognize the important part they played in Derek's life. But Derek's special commitment in his life was to Marcel, and it was reciprocated without reservation. I have never known a more deeply bonded or loving couple than Derek and Marcel. Throughout Derek's long, painful battle with kidney failure and cancer, Marcel was at his side, and he filled her life with love, with humor, with wisdom, and with pride. Marcel, none of us can lift the dark cloud of grief which overshadows your life. But we can tell you that each of us appreciates your loss and shares it with you. We knew the experience of Derek's friendship. It remains deeply embedded in us. We're all privileged to have known such a special man. Thank you.
When Great Trees Falls by Maya Angelou. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder. Lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly. Our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory, suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We're not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms, slowly and always irregularly. Spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses, restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed, they existed. We can be and be better, for they existed.
Derek Farwagi, my extraordinary friend. Marcel and Rowena are the loves of your lives. My memories of Derek may help us celebrate this unique citizen of the world and much he has given to us. Derek was easy to connect with people and at ease wherever he landed. We both grew up in cosmopolitan Cairo, and we landed 40 years later in the same garden in Amman. My brother Mamdouh took me to a garden party reception hosted by Marcel at her residence. And the moment I entered, who should I see but Derek? We shouted, we screamed, we hugged, we embraced, we kept hugging. The guests fell silent. The garden came to a dead end. We really embraced. Derek and I grew in cosmopolitan Cairo on the Nile in the 50s. Elegant, dynamic, a world of opera and Kulthum, croquet gardens, farms on the fields, on the Nile, British officers and elegant pashas, and all the languages of the Mediterranean. Imagine Derek and I were in the same class at Gezira Prep in Cairo when we were 10 years old. And if we look at the class photo, you will see him in his Boy Scouts with his socks and knee and his hair nicely brushed. He was ready to go. I was masking a smile. We were then ready for the English school in Heliopolis. We had gone together to co-ed dances and had more of the British discipline. We were ready to go to London. Derek at the age of 17 and I at the age of 19. Unfortunately, I don't remember bumping into Derek in an English pub or having Yorkshire pudding together. Derek, my friend. It was only after Marcel's garden party, it was smooth sailing for us, for our lives. Sailing on the Nile, cruising towards Abu Simbel with our wives, Marcel with the State Department and my wife Laila with the United Nations. We had great times together. We also summered in Tuscany where Marcel organized and Derek navigated deftly in his Italian language. We summered in the southern part of France, and we enjoyed and celebrated the 4th of July on Shibik Island. We all went together to the State Department when Colin Powell confirmed Marcel as the US ambassador to the United Arab Emirates, and Derek stood tall, proud, and elegant by her side. We had enjoyed each other's company and enjoyed our Egyptian humor. Whatever Egyptian expression we had brought us back to our childhood. Derek was fond of life and he had a great appetite for food. In 2018, Laila and I began to receive his Mediterranean gourmet blog. It was a great cultural treasure. Each recipe had a story. It brought us back to our childhood of Cairo and London. But Derek enjoyed not the five-star Michelin food or the candle lights in bistros. He enjoyed eating full medames on the corners of crowded streets of Cairo or Singapore or Bangkok. He had a great appetite for life. We traveled, and all our travels had amusing adventures. In Italy, we were together in Pescia. We were about to board for an overnight to Florence. Our rent-a-car Avis conked out. It ran out of a battery, and we had to push it into a disabled parking lot. Which qualified, and we ran to catch the train to Firenze. On the way, Derek negotiated with Avis, but each time the phone line was disconnected because we went into a tunnel, and after a tunnel, and after a tunnel, he gave up and said, "Basta, I'm not doing any more business in Italy." We had the great times, and we enjoyed each other's company. Father Isaac shared with me that Derek was grateful in his life. I am grateful that I had Derek in my life. I love you, Derek.
It's wonderful to see such an outpouring of love and support for Marcel, the family, and in memory of Derek. So Marcel asked me to tell a story. And actually, it's one of my favorite stories about Derek. I should say that I met Derek when I was posted to Embassy Amman a number of years ago. Marcel was my boss. Ambassador Egan, who is here with us today, was our ambassador. And I got to know Derek at that time. Well, at one point in time, Derek shared some information with me. He said, I was talking to our mutual friend, Widad Kawar, and she tells me that my family, the Farwagis, are from Jerusalem. I said, really? He said, yes. She said, are you Catholic? And he said, yes. Well, if you're Catholic and you're Farwagi, you're from Jerusalem. So he said, now, how do I find out about this? Now, it seems that Widad had introduced him, or he learned about a priest somewhere in Amman who did indeed confirm that his family, the Farwagis, were an old, esteemed, very well-known family in the old city in Jerusalem. And they were renowned for the beautiful hotels they had in the old city, and that they were also very well known for hosting religious pilgrims who used to come to Jerusalem for their religious duty. And in fact, the family had very close ties with the Latin Patriarchate in Jerusalem. So he said to me one day, we were just talking, he said, "Now, how do I find out more?" I said, "Leave it to me." Now, I had just finished a posting in Jerusalem, and I knew many people there. And I had a wonderful friend who was like what we say in Arabic, the Mukhtar. I mean, he knew everybody in Jerusalem. So I called him and I said to him, "Here's the story. I need to find the Farwagi family. I believe they're in the old city." He said, "Yes." I said, "Who do you know?" He said, "Give me a few hours. I'll call you back." So within a few hours, my friend called me. He said, "Here are the names. Here are the phone numbers. They're expecting a call from their long lost cousin, Derek." So I told him about this, and he said, "Can we go to Jerusalem?" I said, "Of course." I said, "I'll take you." Because in those days, you could drive from Amman to Jerusalem very easily, door to door, 2 hours. I'm in the old city. I said to Marcel, "Let's find a good weekend and let's take Derek to find his family." So indeed, the first available weekend, we piled into the car and we trundled down the hills to the Jordan Valley and then up the hills to get to Jerusalem. And we went and found the family. And indeed, in a beautiful old hotel with the beautiful Jerusalem stone that only you can find in the old city in Jerusalem. And it turned out, I believe they were either third or fourth cousins. Now, Derek had a bit of information. His sister Marina had done a little bit of homework and was able to find out some information about the family, but really only sketchy. Father, grandfather, maybe an aunt, they weren't sure. And the family started filling in the blanks. "Yes, your family is from Jerusalem." And Derek said, "Well, how do I find out more?" He said, "Very easy. We're going to send you to the seat of the Latin Patriarchate. And they have all the records. You know the churches, the births, the deaths, the marriages, the baptisms. They have everything, right?" So off he went. And there he found the whole family tree, going back generations of his family, the Farwagis in Jerusalem. He was so excited to know of this link to this marvelous old city. So the next day I said to Derek, "You know what? Let's go into the old city. I have a good friend who's an antiques dealer. Let's see if we can find something for you to take and put in your home." You know Marcel and Derek, their home is like a museum, so tasteful, so beautiful, such great paintings, artwork. I said, "Let's find something nice and see if something strikes your fancy." So in the shop we went, and as we were looking at things, his eyes lighted upon a beautiful print. It's a lithograph by David Roberts, who's a very famous painter, Scottish painter, who had done lithographs of the Holy Land. And there he found a lithograph of the old city. And he said, "Oh, I have to have this now because it's of Jerusalem." So I said, "Great," and they purchased it. And anyway, we went back, and a few days later in Amman, I stopped at the house. And as I literally walked in the door, Derek grabbed me and dragged me across the room, and he goes, "Look, look, look." And he's pointing to the wall where the David Roberts print, beautifully framed, was hanging ensconced on the wall. And he said, "Look, my hometown. It's my hometown." Thank you.
Marcel, Moena,
Thank you for allowing me to say a few words about Derek. It's an honor. I first encountered Derek in Cairo in around 1999. And that was when I was working there, and Marcel was also a senior officer at the embassy. And we discovered we had a great interest, as you might imagine, in food, good food. So we would search through Cairo for the best food possible, and maybe a little wine to go with it. You could still do that in Cairo. I'm not sure if you can anymore. But he had a great love for Cairo, a great sense of its history, and sort of a sad and cynical view of how things had developed in Cairo by the time we got there and met in 1999 and years later. But in one long lubricated dinner in some Cairo isolated hotel in Zamalek, could not find it today, we decided to come up with an idea of a business that would help us escape the world of diplomacy and become capitalists. Now, we didn't want to work too much, and we wanted it to be profitable. And so we explored a wide variety of bad ideas during that dinner. And finally, we hit on something we thought, this has got to work. It's very little work. We know that people are interested. And so let's do this. Now, you've got to remember that we couldn't just bring this idea up on our cell phone at the time. That was not possible. So we rushed home enthusiastically after this dinner and got on our home computers after they warmed up and looked up this idea to see if anybody else had it. A lot of people had this idea. And I'm not going to give you the details of it, but it involved people's love for their pets and their desire to spend on them lavishly and eternally. Even back then, I was envious of Derek's cosmopolitanism, his vast array of experiences, his familiarity with Egypt, his impeccable taste. But there was one thing way above all that, that impressed me, and I'm sure impressed a few of you other guys around here, you aging guys. And that is that fantastic head of wavy hair. I mean, it was Hollywood hair. This guy could have been in the movies. He just missed being a movie star. He could have been an Egyptian star. He could have been an American star. Italian, he could have been anything in Hollywood. But, we all miss our calling sometimes. As you all are well aware, Derek touched people all over the world. I have a friend from high school who lives in Fort Davis, Texas, which is about as far west Texas as you can get before roads just sort of run out. He was an eager and faithful reader of Derek's weekly emails, actually made many of the recipes, unlike most of us. But just as I do and many of you, we appreciated most Derek's short vignettes about his life and where these recipes came from. And that was as much substance as any food ingredient in the recipe. In one of those, Derek recalled fondly, on the onset of winter in Cairo, my Greek grandmother would serve up her creamy and delicious avgoulomano soup. Did I get that right? Any Greek speakers here? Avgoulomano? Avgoulomano, thank you. I knew we'd have somebody here speaking. And that's a Greek specialty, of course, with egg and lemon. He says, I still remember what it felt like to have my childhood worries, whatever they might have been at the time, gently disappear and be replaced by a warm, satisfying glow after a hot bowl of hot soup. In another entry, Derek said, "I am sure there are many recipes for pizzaiola sauce, as many recipes as there are pizzerias in Naples. But I have stuck to a simple one. It was handed down to me by my aunt in Cairo, who used to cook for her Neapolitan husband. Capers, black olives, and oregano make this sauce true to its origin." Derek gave us not just recipes, but also intimate glimpses into his personal history as he demonstrated a deep appreciation for the simple joys of living. As a naturalized American citizen, Derek was true to his roots, but also deeply patriotic. He was puzzled and pained by the deterioration of American politics in a way that only a person who has the highest aspirations for his adopted country could be. I only wish that I could call him and ask for his unvarnished views on Tuesday's presidential debate. Perhaps as we continue to honor Derek's memory in the months and years ahead, we should put aside some of the politics of the day of the moment and find some specific material ways to improve the lives of others around us. In recent years, my wife Zoe and I have seen Derek and Marcel through a very different prism, but still a very loving prism, an image of a couple who takes care of each other when the going gets rough, very rough. There were moments of great hope and great despair. And as doctors sometimes say, there were those periods of one damn thing after another, with both Derek and Marcel contending with serious ailments, one on top of another. I was privileged to have various opportunities to speak privately with Derek during these tough times. And one thing was consistent in those quiet talks. He recognized and deeply, deeply appreciated Marcel's enduring support. He loved her without reserve. He cared about her welfare when lesser men would have dwelt exclusively on their own travails. Our friend Derek was a man of substance and style to the end. I will miss him.
I'd like to talk about chosen family. Today we gather not only to mourn a deep and cutting loss, but also to celebrate the profound impact Derek had on each of our lives. Derek understood something crucial about life, that family isn't just those we are born into, but also those we choose to surround ourselves with. Derek believed in the power of friendship with a passion that was infectious. His ability to forge connections was legendary, easily turning strangers into friends and friends into extended family. His smile, his humor, his swagger, his riz, as the kids would say, he had it all. Derek savored not only life, but the people he chose to live his life with. My family met Derek and Marcel in Jordan in the 90s. Whether it was fabulous cocktails at their residence or pasta dinners at our First Circle house on the balcony, it was always special because of the magic they brought to the event. Derek shared stories of his incredible life, the trips to exotic places, the stories about being an ad man on Madison Avenue long before the show Mad Men, the meals, the recipes, his passion for music, and the hours we spent where I would teach him politically correct terms and he would laugh me off. When my mother Asa moved to DC in 2016, Marcel and Derek effortlessly stepped in as our family here. Those of us Arabs living in the diaspora know how hard it can be to find our people, but we barely had to look. They were just there, ready, willing, and able. Countless brunches, lunches, and dinners in their impeccably decorated house. Derek proudly showing off his garden, his sculptures, and his art. Dinners out at restaurants where he and Mummy would both argue to go straight to bread and dessert before we had even picked up the menu. When Derek got sick, one of the things I admired the most was how he and Marcel normalized life. The invitations never stopped. He and Mummy loved to find humor in one-upping each other about their health, their aneurysms, and then he would immediately get serious and tell us to stop sweating the small stuff. Take the trip, go to the show, enjoy life. His joie de vivre was endless. It was contagious. When he was turning 80 and I was turning 50 this year, thank you very much, he and I declared that we would break the bank and have caviar and champagne. I regret we didn't get to do that, but I'm assuming that my father Adnan greeted him in heaven with caviar, champagne, and a book of dirty jokes. During the last week of his life, my mother and I had the privilege of being there with Derek and Marcel, and some friendly faces that I see here in the room. He was in and out, but he was still Derek. He laughed at my jokes, happily accepted foot massages, and would grin from ear to ear when I told him his crazy friend, my mother, would be arriving soon. I told him he had to be careful she didn't share his secrets, and he would give me that sly smile of his. At one point, I looked over, and he and Marcel were holding hands and making eye contact only a film director could direct. I've never seen love like that, so tangible. My counsel to us all is to aspire to find someone to look at you the way that Derek looked at Marcel. It's the stuff of epic love stories. I know he went in peace. I know he went knowing he had a life that most people would never have the chance to live. I know he went cherishing his golden hours, as he called them with Marcel. He went knowing he had just seen his beautiful daughter Moana and said his goodbyes. I also know that we will all think of him every day. I aspire to be as erudite and full of humor and to have a love of life as Derek did. I don't know what I believe as far as what happens after life, but I know he's hanging out, drinking Aperol spritzes with my father, impeccably dressed, judging how good the caviar in heaven is, which is pretty cool with me.
Hello to this incredible group of family, friends, and ex-colleagues near and far. It is truly a gift of grace to know that so many loved, respected, enjoyed, and relished in the experience of knowing and spending with my dad. I have known that I would be talking today and thought to sit down many a time to draft what I thought should be the right thing to say. The urge to do so didn't come until earlier this week when I realised that all I could really do was speak from the heart with the ease and comfort of which my relationship with my dad made me feel. The meaning of tribute is an act, statement, or gift that is intended to show gratitude, respect, or admiration. By way of a statement, here goes. My name is Farwagi. I was born in London in March 1973, which means I had 51 years to enjoy and be part of my dad's life. And what a life it was, and what a relationship we had. Being a child, it took me a few decades to realize that parents are their own people and not just parents. So for me, the decades with Dad looked and felt like this. In my first 10 years, I remember him to be hardworking, really good looking, lots of laughter and fun with friends and family in Pearl Beach, as well as Sydney. A charismatic businessman, the world of advertising in the 80s was perfect for a man of charm and swagger. Amongst all of what he gave to everyone else, he made me feel safe. Ages 10 to 20 for me were a bit of a roller coaster. At boarding school, I remember him to be the dad no one else had and everybody else wanted. He'd turn up every Wednesday afternoon and take me and one of my country friends to Cafe 21 in Double Bay for chocolate pancakes. He'd turn up at school performances and sit in the front row, rolling the event program up to look at me through while waving his other arm in the air so I and everyone else could see. Absolutely mortified I was, but also loving every minute. He always made me laugh a lot. My parents' divorce was rough, but as they say, every cloud has a silver lining. We got super close. There are worse places to process a life shake-up than an apartment overlooking Bondi Beach. I remember him at this time to be vulnerable, unbelievably honest, brave, and strong. Looking back, it was here that I started to see what he stood for, what his values were, and I started to learn from him what it meant to go through and how to go through the ups and downs of life. At this time, I felt and understood what a parent's love felt like. A high point on this roller coaster was meeting Marcel. I have to admit that the idea of him moving to the other side of the world for anyone felt awful, but somehow I knew that the universe had plans for these two, and who was I to get in the way? And thank goodness I didn't. What a truly memorable and spectacular wedding. More on them as a couple later. During this time, I got to know and understand his Middle Eastern background and met his side of the family. This sort of elevated him in my eyes to a global citizen, comfortable and able to thrive in any circumstance with anyone. Age 20 to 30, I remember his and Marcel's generosity of spirit and time when I struggled to assimilate into university life in the UK and the start of my working life in London, as well as just straight out generous for the gift of my education. Based in the UK for much of my 20s, I got to travel to the wonderful places Marcel was posted. I got to spend time in their orbit, swirling in their world of really interesting and international people, observing Dad carve out professional paths for himself, reinventing ways to use his skill set and make his life work wherever they were. This wasn't always easy, but his love for Marcel and enjoyment of being back in the Middle East were at the forefront of his focus. Through this time, he taught me what it looks like to be in a healthy relationship, what it looked like to have a world where people wanted to be in your presence, and most helpfully, how to be resilient. I moved back to Australia at the end of my 20s, a little trickier to catch up frequently, but nonetheless, we caught up when we could, most memorably for my wedding to Jason in 2003. I remember walking down the aisle on his arm, feeling his pride and love. Still debatable whether I shone or he did. He was still very good looking. 30 to 40, so many experiences and memories. He became a grandfather to Havana and Monty, lots of visits to Tokyo and Australia. His useful piece of parenting advice: you're going to screw your kids up in some capacity, just try not to do it too much. I love that he wasn't conventional, that he said what he thought, often to the effect of being real, genuine, and down to earth, but also very funny. We enjoyed frequent visits to Tokyo whilst Jason and I lived in Japan, doing his best to be part of Havana and Monty's lives and that of our expat friendships and experiences. Ages 40 to 50 for me, for my dad, represent solidarity and sheer bravery is what springs to mind here for my dad. The early part of this decade was not an easy time in my life, and for a father who loved his daughter so much, I put him through a lot. He never stopped loving me, never stopped wanting to be there, offering anything he could to help. At 7.5 years sober, a day doesn't go by when I don't mentally acknowledge the bond he and I shared. I think at some level, knowing that he was praying to God every day I'd get through it, willing me from the geographical sideline to front up and get well, gave me the strength to seek help and get well. I've always loved him, but for this, I owe him my life. As an aside, but an important note, I'd like to thank my children, Havana and Monty, for sticking through that, and my loving, forgiving, and awesome partner, Trent, and to dear friends, Sophie, Bindi, Lynn, and Kate. I'm here giving tribute today to my dad because of all of you. A long-standing kidney issue started to get worse, and the last few years have been what seems glaringly obvious now as a series of really challenging health events. It occurs to me that through it all, he did his absolute best to stay positive, at some level accept what was happening to him, his life, and that of his life with Marcel. I can only hope that I'm able to use the determination and strength of character he has shown during that time in my life and as an example to my children. I miss him. He was my person. He always made me feel seen, heard, accepted, and loved. He never missed the opportunity to tell me how proud he was of me as a wife, mother, employee, stepdaughter, and how lucky he was to have me as his daughter. I will forever remember what it felt like to be in a hug with him, pat me on the back and say, "I'm proud of you, sunshine," or "I love you very much today." I loved how he loved food, the process of making it, eating it, and how it brought family and friends together. I will take the memory of eating carbonara followed by mint slices and whipped cream to my grave. To Marcel, my relationship with Dad since 1990 has always had you as part of the story. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for embracing me into your life, for sharing with me your specialness and specialness of your relationship. It's become a model I'll aspire to as I get married a second time in January. Thank you for loving him all these years. You made him so happy. I feel honoured to have been the one he shared his love for you with over many a conversation. Thank you for caring for him all this time while he was sick and for being with him at the very end. I like to think of him as passing on, not passing away. We'll see him again one day when we pass on. When Father Isaac came to do a prayer for Dad before he was cremated, he remarked that during the last time they shared space, he saw a man who was grateful. He was thankful to the Lord for all he had been given, that he was in complete union with the one who had given him everything. Such a blessing. Dad, you gave me, Marcel, and all these people here today your all. We will remember you so fondly and with love. At the age of 51, I still shed a tear when we said goodbye after a trip. Today, those tears are aplenty, saying goodbye for the last time. Gone, but never forgotten. Love always. Sunshine.
But when her child is born, she no longer remembers the anguish because of the joy of having brought a human being into the world. So you have pain now, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice, and no one can take that joy away from you. The Gospel of the Lord. This reading, so I chose it personally because I had the privilege of meeting Marcel and Derek. I am a baby priest, okay? That's why I look pretty young. I have been a priest 3 months. And I'm at St. Matthew's Cathedral, and I was in the office, and I got a phone call. And it was Marcel. And she said, my husband is Catholic, but I'm not familiar with the sacraments, but you know, he's going through terminal cancer, and he would like to be in contact with his faith again. And I said, sure, I'll be right there. And the Lord began this story because I arrived to the home and I was greeted by the Arab hospitality. She sat me down, she gave me something to drink, and then we went up. And like I said, and many of you have said, I encountered a man who, despite being in the place that he was, with sickness, with a lot of pain in his last moments, I found a man who had encountered joy. And my question is, where does joy come from? Jesus in the gospel was speaking about joy. You will again experience this joy. You will again have joy. And it stems from what I told them when we had this last ceremony. I encountered a man who was grateful. One of the most selfless people that I met, because we spoke at length. We spoke for about an hour, but we spoke very openly. And I think that I encountered really who he was in that hour, because he shared a lot of things with me. But I encountered a man who on his deathbed had his wife and his daughter in mind. And he was grateful and wanted to manifest the happiness that he had felt, the gratitude that he had felt from his entire life to them. He said, I don't want them to worry about this. I want them to be happy. And I'm glad that you gave that vision of heaven. That is exactly what heaven is like. A Veuve Clicquot and a very good caviar. This is heaven. And I think that when he called, or when he asked for my presence there at that moment, he knew God was calling him back already. Because the way we spoke that day, he said, I am again ready to encounter him. But he was ready. Why was he ready? Because he had practiced the faith no, because he was grateful. And I think this is the transmission that he has given to all of you in the way you've spoken. La vita è bella. Life is beautiful. This is it. If we can come to this revelation, then the Lord can give us this joy. And I hope that we all leave here today saying, life is beautiful. You have given me everything, because this is exactly what he experienced. Lord, you've given me everything. What more can I ask for? And I wanted to conclude with another passage of scripture because we spoke about Marcel in our conversation, and many of the things that you speak of with a priest is confidential, right? But I would like to read this passage to his spouse, to his widow, that you may treasure in her heart the relationship that we've had in these past months, but also that moment where he was truly able to manifest many things. And I hope that this manifests, you don't hear it just as scripture, but you hear it as Derek's words. A capable wife, who can find her? She is far more precious than jewels, and the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of his life. She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She puts her hand to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. She is not afraid for her household when it snows, for all her household are clothed in crimson. Her husband is known in the city gates, taking a seat among the most prominent of the lands. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. I think that he was most grateful for the love that he had with his wife, because it made manifest the love that God had given him since an early age. So I think we can give thanks in return for his gratitude. And I would like to conclude with one of the Catholic prayers. For our brother Derek. Lord, Derek is gone now from this earthly dwelling and has left behind those who mourn in his absence. Grant that we may hold his memory dear, never bitter for what we have lost, nor regret for the past, but always in the hope of the eternal joy that awaits for us in the kingdom, where you will bring us all together again through Christ our Lord. May our brother Derek rest in peace.
I'm not sure I can speak coherently, but I'll do my best. I just want to thank you all here in DC and around the world for joining me, Moena, the rest of Derek's family in celebrating his life, sharing memories, and to pay tribute, really, to the beautiful, gracious, and joyful person he was to all of us. As Derek and I often said to one another, it was not a small miracle that we met at the time that we did, and it was not a very convenient time. He lived in Sydney, and I was posted at the embassy in Cairo. It was very difficult to think of how we could put those two lives together. But against all odds, we managed to do so, and really, in large part, thanks to Moena, who at the age of 15 or maybe 16 at that point, had the courage to encourage her father to start a new life with me. So to Moena, I thank her, and to God also. I thank them for having had the honor, really, of being Derek's wife, his best friend, and his soulmate. I miss him and will continue to do so every single moment of every day. But I want to thank you all for sharing your time with us today. And really, your love has made me feel stronger. Thank you.
So, Marcel, one thing you've always known how to do is put together a great program, and this was a great program. The next event or next part of the program is we all go to Marcel's house and do what everybody said Derek did so well, right? Which was eat and drink and remember. And it just occurs to me that everybody here has their own Derek story, right? That's why we're here. And we're here because Derek in some way brought us all together, right? And my only thought for everybody is let's just try and in honor of Derek, stay together as he would have liked. Thank you.